In my last video, I laid out what the mainstream media refused to say out loud. The 4-hour window, the gate that was never forced, the camera disabled with surgical timing, and the man who drove Nancy Guthrie home on the last night she was seen alive, then chose silence while his wife begged for her mother on national television. The comment section split in half. Half of you wanted the second name, the one I held back because I was still pulling records. The other half had one argument. If the FBI describes the suspect as 5'9" to 5'10", and the man who dropped Nancy off is taller than that, the theory collapses. And they were not wrong. Unless it was not one person. I have been through court records, property filings, band archives, social media back to 2007, and every confirmed development through this week. What I found is not a theory. It is a pattern. Built from 19 years of shared history, a criminal record that maps onto this crime with uncomfortable precision, and 2 DNA profiles that confirm what one person alone cannot explain. This video is about that pattern. 2 men, a Bitcoin wallet the FBI monitored that nobody ever touched, nothing held back. Before we go any further, everything you are about to hear is drawn entirely from publicly reported information, court records, and my own analysis of the public record. No one named in this video has been charged with any crime. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has stated that the Guthrie family has been cleared. I am not accusing anyone of anything. I am showing you the pattern the evidence creates and letting you draw your own conclusions. If you have information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, the number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Now let's get into it. Before I name anyone, I need you to understand why the physical record in this case makes a single suspect theory almost impossible to defend. Start with the 41 minutes. Nancy's doorbell camera went dead at 1:47 a.m. Her pacemaker lost Bluetooth contact at 2:28. That is 41 minutes. Professional burglars work in 5-minute windows. 41 minutes inside a stranger's home in the middle of the night is either the most reckless operation in criminal history, or it is someone who was not afraid of being interrupted. Someone who either knew no one was coming or had someone outside making sure of it. Nancy had to be located, controlled, and moved. She is 84 years old with a pacemaker, but she is a woman who raised 3 children, traveled the world, and lived independently in the same Tucson home for 40 years. She does not go quietly. She had to be walked from her bedroom, through the hallway, out the front door, down the driveway, into a vehicle parked beyond camera range. And while that was happening inside, someone had to be watching the street. One person cannot be in both places at once. Former FBI hostage negotiator Chip Massey said it directly. Managing an elderly hostage while running the operational perimeter requires coordination. A single operator cannot sustain. Fox News drone footage confirmed smashed floodlights at the rear of Nancy's property. The doorbell camera covers the front, one person disabling the front camera while a second eliminates the rear lighting simultaneously. That is not improvised. That is coordinated 2-point entry, agreed on in advance. But the suspect did not simply arrive on February 1st. He rehearsed twice. The Pima County Sheriff flagged January 11th as a date of interest. Then on January 23rd, 9 days before Nancy was taken, a man appeared on a Ring camera 6.5 miles away, walking backward down a residential street. Slowly, deliberately. When a dog barked, every human reflex says turn toward the sound. He did not turn. He maintained the backward orientation and kept walking. He would rather have fallen in the dark than give that lens a single clear frame of his face. To understand why, you need to understand how a Ring camera works. It is not recording constantly. It runs on a passive infrared sensor that sits dormant until body heat triggers it. The sensor wakes the processor activates the lens establishes a Wi-Fi handshake. That sequence takes 1 to 2 seconds. Walk toward the camera, and those first seconds capture your face approaching. Walk backward, and the camera wakes up to the back of a hood. Your face is already past the sensor by the time any recording begins. The camera's vulnerability is not the lens. It is the gap between detection and recording. And he had found it. He had mapped that lag time and physical exploit around it using nothing but the direction of his own body. When the dog barked and he did not break, that was not instinct. That was a technique practiced until it became automatic. 9 days later, the same backpack with the same reflective strips appeared on Nancy's porch, but the backward walk was gone. He moved forward, directly, without hesitation, because January 23rd had already told him what he needed to know. No police, no response. He was invisible. By February 1st, the testing phase was over and the execution phase had begun. But January 23rd was not the only pre-visit. 4 separate networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, each working independent law enforcement sources, confirmed the suspect made multiple visits to Nancy's actual neighborhood before the night she was taken. At least one of those visits happened without the backpack and without the holster. No operational gear, just a person in ordinary clothes moving through a residential area in a way that drew no attention from any neighbor. The Pima County Sheriff pushed back on elements of that reporting. And that pushback is its own signal. When 4 independent networks, each with separate sources, land on the same detail, and the agency most invested in controlling the investigation's public narrative disputes it, you are not watching a correction. You are watching a sensitive piece of evidence being managed. February 1st was the night the operational gear appeared. The person wearing it had already been in that neighborhood, moving through it like someone the environment already recognized. 2 DNA profiles confirm what all of that operational logic already points toward. The sheriff and the FBI confirmed 2 separate male DNA profiles recovered in connection with this case. Neither matching Nancy, neither matching any family member, neither matching anyone in CODIS, the FBI's national database of 19 million known offender profiles. 1 profile came from inside the home. The second from a glove found 2 miles away along what investigators believe was the escape route. The sheriff confirmed these profiles do not match each other. They came from 2 different people. 2 people left their biology at 2 separate locations tied to the same crime. That is not a theory. That is confirmed physical evidence. And once you accept the 2-person framework, every detail in this case reorganizes around it. Drop a comment right now, because what I am about to lay out has not been assembled this way anywhere else. The framework works like this. 1 person provides the intelligence, every camera position, whether those cameras actually record or are effectively props because the subscription was never paid. The gate, the medication schedule, the pacemaker, the timing window when the most powerful member of the family would be unreachable on the other side of the world. An outsider needs weeks of surveillance to assemble that picture. An insider already has it, because they walked through that front gate every week for 20 years. That person is the architect. They never appear at the scene. Their value is informational. Their alibi is simply not being anywhere suspicious. Tommaso Cioni is 50 years old. Born in Tuscany, he moved to the United States in 2006 and married Nancy Guthrie that same year, Nancy's eldest daughter. 20 years of marriage. 20 years of Friday dinners at Nancy's house. 20 years of walking through her gate, past her cameras, down her hallway. He teaches AP biology at a Tucson charter school. He plays bass in a local band, and he is the last confirmed person to have seen Nancy Guthrie alive. On January 31st, he drove her home from dinner, walked her to the door at approximately 9:50 p.m., confirmed she was inside, and drove home. 4 miles, 10 minutes. 3 hours and 57 minutes later, the camera went dead. No publicly confirmed alibi for that window has been released. No confirmed alibi for Annie either. They share the same house. Whatever alibi one provides, the other corroborates. 4 miles is wide enough to drive home, wait for the neighborhood to go silent, and return to a house you know better than anyone. Body language analysts who reviewed the FBI footage used a specific term for the suspect's movement. Ownership behavior. No scanning, no hesitation, no moment of orientation. He goes directly to the camera and taps it twice, not frantically, not nervously. The way you touch something you have touched hundreds of times before. That is not a stranger in an unfamiliar space. That is muscle memory. 20 years of Friday dinners encoded into a body. Consider what the planner needed to know about those cameras. Not just where they were, but whether they actually recorded. Nancy's Nest system had no active cloud subscription. The cameras could send motion alerts, but were not storing continuous footage. The FBI had to partner with Google to recover residual back-end data. The only people who knew those cameras were props are people who spent years in that house and never once saw her subscribe. The gate. The suspect passes through it in the FBI footage without forcing anything. No tool marks, no prying. Either Nancy forgot to lock it, or someone left it open. Someone who was standing at that exact gate 4 hours earlier saying goodnight. The medication. Nancy's daily medications sat on the kitchen counter. The sheriff confirmed they manage conditions that become life-threatening without regular dosing. The suspect was inside for 41 minutes and neither person took them. A genuine ransom operation keeps the hostage alive. Leaving critical medication behind is either profound incompetence or evidence that the people involved already knew she would not need it long enough for it to matter. The timing. Nancy was taken the exact weekend Savannah Guthrie was abroad for NBC's Winter Olympics coverage. Olympic assignments are confirmed months in advance. Who knew that schedule? Someone who sat at the same dinner table where that trip was discussed. Now look at the gear and ask the question nobody in mainstream media has asked seriously. Why was it so cheap? A $20 Ozark Trail backpack, a discount ski mask, a belly band holster worn incorrectly over a thick jacket. Firearms experts noted no one with a single day of tactical training would configure a holster that way. Total cost, roughly $70. Flip that argument. An intelligent person designing a crime they cannot be connected to does not just need to avoid leaving evidence. They need to control the behavioral profile investigators build. Show up in professional equipment, and the FBI describes a trained, disciplined, educated suspect. That profile narrows fast toward people who study science and understand forensic systems. Show up in clearance aisle gear, and you build a character. Impulsive, low-level, never planned anything carefully. And investigators stop looking at the methodical AP biology teacher 4 miles away. That is not poor judgment. That is deliberate misdirection. And 6 weeks in, no agency has named Tommaso as a suspect. The misdirection is holding. In May 2025, 8 months before the kidnapping, Tommaso signed a durable power of attorney giving Annie control over his financial and property affairs. Legal experts note it is routine in real estate transactions. The document exists, the timing exists, the kidnapping exists. Ashley Banfield reported that a law enforcement source identified Tommaso as a potential prime suspect. The sheriff later cleared the family publicly. But federal agents returned to Annie and Tommaso's home more than 5 separate times, removing items in brown paper bags, towing Annie's vehicle, examining the septic tank, removing security cameras from the property. Investigators who have moved on do not come back 5 times. They do not tow cars and examine septic systems for someone they have already cleared. Every member of the Guthrie family went on camera. Savannah posted videos begging for her mother's return. Cameron spoke directly to the kidnapper. Annie cooperated publicly. Every single one of them screamed into the void, except one. Tommaso Cioni did not post a single statement, never appeared alongside Annie asking for Nancy's return. The last person to see her alive chose complete silence while her family broke apart in front of the world. Silence is a choice. In a criminal investigation, silence is specifically the choice that attorneys demand from clients whose next sentence could become evidence in court. Then came March 2nd, 1 month to the day. Tommaso appeared at the Tribute outside Nancy's home, walking with Annie and Savannah. No words, no statement. A carefully timed public appearance after weeks of strategic invisibility on the anniversary, with every camera in Tucson watching. The architect never appears at the scene. The person who walks through the gate at 1:47 in the morning is someone else entirely. The FBI described the suspect as male, 5'9" to 5'10", average build, dark clothing, ski mask, nitrile gloves, Ozark Trail backpack, mustache or goatee visible beneath the mask. Former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jim Clemente identified what appeared to be a tattoo or marking on the suspect's right wrist. A detail he said, if confirmed, could significantly narrow the investigative field. For the first month, Tommaso's supposed height was the argument that cleared him. FBI said 5'9" to 5'10". Critics said Tommaso was 6 feet, too tall, cannot be him. That gap opened the door to a second person. But when Tommaso walked to the memorial on March 2nd alongside Savannah, who is reported at 5'10", he was not towering over her. Frame by frame, he stands close to eye level. Current estimates place him at approximately 5'9½", inside the FBI's stated range. The height argument that was supposed to close the Tommaso theory may not close it at all. The architect and the operative framework has to hold both possibilities. He may have sent someone else, or he may have walked through that gate himself while someone waited in a vehicle outside. His name is Dominic Aaron Lee Evans. There is a name that keeps surfacing in the records alongside Tommaso. A name that answers the operative profile with a precision that is genuinely difficult to dismiss. Dominic Evans is 48 years old, elementary school teacher in Tucson, drummer in a band called Early Black, co-founded with Tommaso Cioni in 2007 via classified ads. Evans through Craigslist, Tommaso through the Tucson Weekly. 19 years together. Their debut album, recorded at Loveland Studios in 2009, is called Life, Love, Love, Murder. I will not sensationalize that title. But in the context of what happened to Nancy Guthrie, and the man who played on that record now appearing in discussions of a federal kidnapping investigation, it sits differently than it did in 2009. 19 years of musical partnership produces something investigators understand well. A drummer who has spent that long reading a bassist does not need explicit communication. He anticipates. He responds before anything is spoken. In music, that state is called being locked in. Two players functioning as a single organism, coordinating without signals, moving through pressure without a word exchanged. Think about what that means outside a rehearsal room. Two people who can execute a plan in the dark, in silence, in a stranger's home, with no visible coordination required. What happened on February 1st did not need a planning meeting. It needed two people who had already spent 19 years learning to move together without being told. Now let me walk through Evans's public criminal record because the specific offenses matter here. Pima County judicial records show felony burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement, and DUI. Burglary in Arizona means entering a structure unlawfully with intent to commit a felony. The legal definition maps almost exactly onto what happened at Nancy's house at 1:47 a.m. Robbery requires confronting a person and taking through force or threat of force. Whoever entered that home and physically removed an 84-year-old woman crossed a threshold most people never approach. Someone with a robbery conviction has already crossed it. Embezzlement adds a pattern of calculated financial deception. Someone comfortable violating trust and crossing legal boundaries when the opportunity is there. That criminal profile does not describe someone who would hesitate at the front gate of a house at 1:47 in the morning. It describes someone who has already demonstrated they can. Here is the forensic detail that has not received enough attention. Neither DNA profile matched anyone in CODIS. For a person with no criminal history, that simply means they have never been arrested for a qualifying offense. But Evans has multiple felony entries in Pima County's judicial system. So why does his DNA not appear in the national database? Arizona's collection laws have changed significantly over time. If his convictions predate mandatory DNA collection protocols for his offense categories, or if his cases resolved through plea agreements that did not trigger submission requirements, he could carry a substantial criminal record while remaining completely invisible to the FBI's database. A criminal record and no DNA in the system. In CODIS, that person does not exist. And invisible is precisely what whoever left their biology inside Nancy Guthrie's home needed to be. Evans is approximately 5'9", average build, publicly photographed with a mustache and goatee consistent with the FBI description. Online investigators reviewing Early Black performance footage identified what appears to be a marking on his right wrist, consistent with Jim Clemente's observation. Every single data point in the FBI's physical profile is consistent with Dominic Evans, not as proof, not as a conclusion, as a pattern that demands explanation. Now I want to talk about geography. Because where Evans has connections is not just relevant to the crime scene, it is relevant to where Nancy Guthrie may be right now. Public records connect Evans to Tucson and Marana. Reports have also linked him to a property in Rio Rico, a rural community approximately 60 miles south of Tucson on Interstate 19, a straight desert highway running directly toward the Mexican border, ending 16 miles north of Nogales. 60 miles south of Tucson at 3 in the morning means large land parcels, scattered homes separated by acres of desert, dirt roads absent from Google Street View, no streetlights, no traffic cameras. The kind of property where someone could be held without a single neighbor hearing a car arrive. Google Maps confirms the drive from Nancy's Catalina Foothills neighborhood to Rio Rico at 2:30 a.m. with no traffic. 52 minutes. If someone left Nancy's neighborhood at 2:30 a.m. and drove south on I-19, they reach Rio Rico in roughly 50 minutes. There by 3:20. Back in Tucson before 4:30. The entire round trip inside the dark, before sunrise, before any neighbor steps outside. The FBI confirmed contact with Mexican law enforcement through its Sonora suboffice. The Mexican Secretary of Security stated publicly, there is no current indication Nancy is in Mexico. I am not suggesting she crossed the border, but the investigation has reached south, along the same corridor where Evans has documented connections. Interstate 19 is not a back road. It is a managed highway corridor with cell towers at regular intervals. Every phone traveling that route between 2:30 and 4:30 on February 1st connected to those towers in sequence. That data does not expire. It sits in telecommunications records waiting for a warrant. In late February, Evans spoke to the New York Times. He met Nancy once, an Easter egg hunt in 2011. He learned of her disappearance from Instagram and messaged Tommaso to offer support. Investigators interviewed him for about 40 minutes. He says he has not heard from them since. 2 readings: either they moved on because he was irrelevant, or they no longer need him in a room answering questions because what they are building, tower records, purchase histories, genealogical DNA analysis, does not require his cooperation. He described it as a real-life nightmare. His family hid with the lights off. I am not dismissing that. No law enforcement agency has named Dominic Evans as a suspect. The sheriff's clearance covered family, siblings, and spouses. Evans is a bandmate. That boundary is specific. The clearance does not reach him. But investigators will have examined one detail carefully. His first response to a national kidnapping involving his bandmate's family was to contact Tommaso through a private channel. Evans volunteered that himself. The question is not whether the message was sent. The question is what the metadata shows. The timing, the frequency, whether the communication pattern between these 2 men changed in the weeks before February 1st. Put yourself inside that house, not as an investigator, as the person who planned it. You are standing in a dark hallway, camera disabled, neighborhood silent, 41 minutes. At the end of that hallway is an 84-year-old woman who does not yet know you are there. You have been in this hallway before. You know which floorboard creaks, which door sticks, where the light switches are, and why you will not touch them. You know all of it because someone described it to you. Someone who walked this exact hallway dozens of times and never once thought of it as intelligence. They just thought of it as going home for dinner. How many people in Tucson, Arizona know both the layout of Nancy Guthrie's home and carry a felony record involving forced entry? Drop that number in the comments, because when you work it carefully, it gets very small, very fast. And tell me this while you are down there. Do you think the DNA closes this case first, or does the car footage on that back road break it open? I will be reading every response. While the 2 viral scripts on this case were being watched by millions, the investigation crossed into territory neither of them covered. What has emerged since changes the weight of everything you just heard. The Wi-Fi jammer. In the first week of March, FBI and sheriff's investigators canvassed Nancy's neighborhood door to door asking one specific question. Did you experience any internet disruptions on the night of January 31st into February 1st? Multiple homeowners confirmed that is exactly what agents asked. Several reported unusual connectivity loss that night. One neighbor told NewsNation that his Ring camera history for that specific night simply does not exist. The data is gone. Now look at the FBI footage of the suspect approaching Nancy's door. There is an antenna-like device visible in his jacket pocket. Investigators are actively exploring whether a signal jammer was deployed, a device that blocks wireless communication across an entire area simultaneously, taking down multiple Ring cameras and internet-connected devices in one action. A signal jammer is not $70 gear. It requires knowledge, procurement, and deliberate operational planning from someone who understood the neighborhood's camera network was the primary risk and solved for it before arrival. The Walmart backpack was the costume. What was in that pocket may have been the actual weapon. The car. A couple roughly 2.5 miles from Nancy's house lives on a residential back road. No traffic cameras, no commercial lighting, zero through traffic after midnight. The kind of road that never appears on an investigator's initial canvas, because no one uses it unless they deliberately chose it. Their Ring camera logged 12 vehicles between midnight and 6 a.m. on February 1st. One appeared at 2:36 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker disconnected at 2:28. NBC correspondent Liz Kreutz drove the route, 6 minutes from Nancy's house to that camera. Pacemaker goes dark at 2:28, car should reach the camera by 2:34. It appears at 2:36. 2 minutes of margin. Think about what happens in those 2 minutes. Pacemaker goes dark at 2:28. The vehicle is moving. It reaches the end of Nancy's street and stops. Not at a light. There are no lights on desert residential roads at 2:30 a.m. They stop because they need a moment. Mirrors checked. Mask removed slowly because pulling it fast creates static that transfers fibers. Listening for sirens. None. Road clear in both directions. Then they pull onto the back road at normal speed and drive. 6 minutes later, at 2:36, a Ring camera records them passing. 2 minutes between the pacemaker going dark and the car appearing on that back road. That is not coincidence. That is built-in operational margin. Time reserved specifically for the exit procedure I just described. Retired NYPD Detective Pat Brosnan assessed the vehicle as a Kia Soul. The sheriff confirmed to NBC it is part of the active investigation. The couple's home sits outside the 2-mile canvassing radius investigators initially set. Nobody knocked on their door. They came forward on their own after watching the news. Which raises a question that should be keeping investigators awake at night. How many other cameras between 2 and 5 miles from Nancy's home captured something that was never requested because the perimeter stopped just short? Which direction was that car traveling? South on I-19 toward Rio Rico, west toward Marana, north toward Oro Valley. 3 directions, 3 stories, 3 different names at the end of each road. The FBI has the footage. They know which road. The fact that they are not saying so is itself a piece of information. Now the phones. Because this is where the investigation may already have its answer, and where January 23rd becomes more forensically valuable than February 1st. Every time a phone connects to a cell tower, that tower logs the handshake, the time, device identifier, signal strength, direction of travel. Telecommunications providers retain that data. Federal investigators can subpoena it. Unlike surveillance cameras that depend on angle and positioning, tower data has no gaps. Every device in the coverage area was logged. If 2 people ran this operation together, investigators are filtering for 2 phone signatures traveling in proximity near Nancy's neighborhood on February 1st. 2 devices moving through the same tower sequence, then separating to different home addresses. 2 devices whose registered owners already have a 19-year documented relationship. That filter applied to the full tower dataset produces a very short list. But January 23rd may matter more. On February 1st, they knew investigators were coming. Counter-surveillance precautions were almost certainly in place. On January 23rd, the night of the backward walk, nobody knew that footage would ever be pulled. Law enforcement had not flagged the date. There was no reason for caution, which means that night, they almost certainly carried their own registered phones, drove their own cars. Every tower along their route logged their actual device identifiers, tied directly to their real names, on a night they fully expected to disappear without consequence. Law enforcement holds both datasets. The overlap, 2 devices appearing together in both windows both nights, is the shortest path from the physical evidence to a specific name, the DNA dead end that opened a new door. In mid-February, investigators recovered black gloves 2 miles from Nancy's home that appeared to match the suspect's footage. DNA extracted, no CODIS match, family ruled out. In early March, further analysis traced that glove DNA to a local restaurant worker with no known connection to the case. That lead is closed. But here is what that development actually reveals. The gloves captured on camera, the ones the suspect actually wore, have not been found. The recovered gloves were different gloves, which means the suspect's gloves, with the suspect's DNA inside them, are still out there, discarded somewhere beyond the current search perimeter, or still in someone's possession. The private lab in Florida is still processing the mixed DNA sample from inside Nancy's home. This is the same methodology that identified the Golden State Killer. Investigators do not need the suspect to have submitted a sample. They need one relative, a cousin, a sibling, anyone who swabbed their cheek for a genealogy website without a second thought. The algorithm builds the family tree from that partial match until the branches converge on a specific name. 2 profiles, 2 family trees built simultaneously, 2 independent mathematical chains closing in at the same time. You cannot unsubmit your cousin's DNA. The database is already building. The only question is how many branches it has to climb. The case now has a dedicated task force, 5 Pima County homicide detectives working full-time alongside FBI agents assigned exclusively to this investigation. The sheriff told NBC on March 2nd that they are definitely closer. Full confidence the case will be solved. 6 weeks in, 2 DNA profiles, a signal jammer under active investigation, a car on a back road at 2:36 a.m., cell tower data from 2 nights, one of which nobody thought to protect, and 2 men who have not spoken publicly to explain any of it. I want to close with the thing I think matters most. Not the DNA, not the jammer, not the car, the fracture point. Every 2-person operation has one the moment the weight becomes unequal, when one person starts calculating whether the other is more dangerous free than in custody. When loyalty built over 19 years of rehearsal rooms and shared stages runs into something that loyalty was never built to carry. That bond was designed to hold under bad sound systems and years without a breakthrough. It was never designed to hold under a federal kidnapping investigation with $1 million reward and 2 DNA profiles closing from opposite directions simultaneously. The reward is $1 million, payable in cash. Anonymous reporting accepted. That number is not just for a stranger who happened to see something. It is for anyone in the circle. Anyone who helped with logistics without fully understanding the scope, anyone who was told something after the fact, anyone now watching the genealogy databases process 2 family trees and doing the math on what the first person to speak receives versus what the last person to speak absorbs. The architect knows the operative can end everything with 1 phone call. The operative knows the architect will deny everything and let him carry the full weight of the prosecution. Neither one can fully trust the other. That is the architecture of fracture. Consider the ransom notes. Multiple emails were sent to media outlets. One referred to the person behind this as the main individual. Main has no meaning without subordinates. You do not call someone the main individual unless you understand there is a hierarchy, layers of involvement, and that person sat at the top of them. The same note described its sender as close to the flame. Close, but not central. Involved, but not the architect. Someone at the outer edge of this who knows exactly what happened and is now watching the investigation close in and trying to decide which side of it to stand on. And then there is the Bitcoin wallet. The ransom emails to TMZ demanded $6 million sent to a specific wallet address. 6 million is a precise number. The kind of operational specificity you include when you actually intend to collect. The FBI monitored that wallet. According to reporting, they sent a small test amount to it, standard investigative technique, to confirm whether a wallet is live and whether whoever controls it is watching. A genuine extortionist waiting for $6 million notices any amount that lands. They respond. They use it to advance the negotiation. Nobody checked it, no withdrawal, no activity. Complete silence from a wallet that should have been monitored obsessively if the ransom was real. Someone who deployed a signal jammer, rehearsed the ring camera technique, and coordinated a 41-minute 2-person operation. does not accidentally ignore a Bitcoin wallet they created. The ransom was never the point. It was the decoy. A financial thread designed to pull the entire investigative narrative toward kidnapping for money, while the actual motive sat completely undisturbed. Flood the coverage with ransom theories. Let every analyst chase the wallet. And let the real reason Nancy was taken go unexamined, while the cameras point somewhere else. The sixth week of this investigation is not being driven by ransom negotiations. It is being driven by DNA, a car on a back road, and cell tower records from 2 nights, one of which the people involved may not have thought to protect. There may be more people who know what happened, people who provided a location, people who helped with logistics, people told after the fact. Every one of them is watching the same coverage right now. Watching the task force form, watching the genealogy databases run, watching $1 million cash reward with anonymous reporting, and the math is collapsing. Former Nassau County Lieutenant Michael Gold stated that based on decades of abduction data, Nancy's location is statistically most likely within 2 to 5 miles of her home. The car at 2:36 a.m. was on a road within that radius. The FBI knows which direction it was traveling. They are working that lead right now. Savannah Guthrie returned to the Today Show studios in New York this week for the first time since her mother disappeared. She has not stopped asking for help. She has not accepted that her mother is gone. Someone in Tucson knows something. A neighbor, a colleague, a student, someone who noticed a late-night drive that made no sense, a purchase that seemed out of place, a silence from someone who should have been devastated but seemed managed instead. That person may be watching this right now. The number is 1-800-CALL-FBI. $1 million in cash. Anonymous. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old with a pacemaker. She has been missing for more than 5 weeks. Every single day matters. I will not stop covering this case until she is found. When the DNA, the vehicle, or the signal jammer evidence produces a confirmed development, I will be here within hours. Because when those results land, every name in this video becomes either a loose thread or a locked door. The evidence is already deciding. It just has not told us yet.